Everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another version of Ruby Visions talk show. I have long awaited for the guest that we have on the show today. Just one of my long-term friends, somebody I look up to in the ministry. Just been waiting for this opportunity. And before I get to him and announce him, I just want to say to the viewers who have tuned in over these last several weeks, thank you for tuning in. And for those who have also shared the video or the talk show, thank you for doing that. As you know, this was birthed out of a vision that really wanted to honor my mother, who passed away on August the 16th of 2007. And in doing that, I wanted to make sure that I could get some information out to the community. The Bible declares that my people perish for the lack of knowledge. And so the guests that have come on the show have been intentional and strategic to help get information communicated to those who have tuned in. I want to pause right now and open with a word of prayer before we go into today's show. So if you would just pray with us wherever you are. Eternal God, we thank you for this opportunity to come in this medium to share information and knowledge with your people. We pray, God, that this show would glorify and edify you, and that you would use it for your glory. We thank you for this guest who's taken time out of his very, very busy schedule to come and share with all of these, your people. Now, God, we just ask that you be glorified. In Christ Jesus' name, we ask it all. Thank God. Amen. Amen. My guest today is none other than Bishop Eric Morrison of Kingdom Word Ministries.
Yes, sir.
Right here in Kansas City, Missouri. Bishop, how long have we been knowing each other?
It has to be over 10 years.
I was going to say at least 10 years.
Yes.
And you have been the same from the first time I met you till now. In terms of, in Kansas City, my experience, because I'm not originally from Kansas City, but in my experience is that there are those who have reached a certain status in ministry that have become untouchable.
Wow.
And when I met you, you were down to earth, and to this day, you still kept your feet on the ground. And that's one of the things that I really like about you. Why don't you greet the viewers in your own way, and we'll get started.
Well, as you already pointed out, we try our best to be transparent and down to earth. I've been pastoring Kingdom Word Ministry for 17 years. I'm into my 17th year right now. Married for 30 years to Regina Renee Morrison. We have 3 children, 5 grandchildren, and I really enjoy the work in ministry. I really enjoy having been utilized as a vessel of God, especially in a time like this. I'm just grateful to the work, and
17 years. I didn't know that. You must have started when you was, what, 18?
Thank you. Thank you for that compliment. Yeah, I did now. Yes, we just entered in, and each year we're at awe that it's been that long. It doesn't seem that.
Well, let me just say, I love me some Miss Regina.
Yes.
The only
lady.
Yeah.
That's right.
I love her. She's been the same from the day I met her until now. And you know, we had the opportunity to work together.
Yes.
With Kingdom Word approaching the opportunity to be a freedom school.
Yes, sir.
And certainly your daughter working in the freedom school.
Freedom, yes.
So I had an opportunity to meet the family a little bit and spend some time with the family. So this is really an honor for me to have the bishop on the show today. We have, over the last several weeks, had some really great people on the show. Let me just do a real quick roll call. We had Marva Moses, who spoke to us about problem children, and I don't want to say even problem children, but she spoke to us about young people who have some additional struggles and how to work with them,
Okay.
how to earn their trust,
Yeah.
and then how to work with their families, because we know that
Awesome.
these children, not only are they individuals, but they are part of a group called the family. And so Marva
Yeah.
spoke to us about how best to work with those children. We also had a young lady by the name of Gina English.
Okay.
She's a dynamic person in her own right.
Mm-hmm.
She is a social worker with the Kansas City Police Department, and she shared with us her role in that effort as a social worker at a police division. And she's sort of the supervisor for all the social workers in each police station
Wow.
throughout the city. We had a young lady by the name of Gardia Garcia,
Mm-hmm.
and she's got a new model program in Kansas City called the Brand Lab. And in that, she basically was looking to recruit students of black and brown color to the field of marketing and publication and marketing, that sort of thing. And so we had the opportunity to visit with her and learn about her program. And of course, we've had Dr. Bob Hill,
Yeah.
Pastor Emeritus of the Community Christian Church here in Kansas City, and consulting with the Kaufman Foundation. And with him, we had a discussion, Bishop, around the educational climate in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And he brought to light some things that were really, really important. And then last week, we had a young brother on the show whom I know you are very familiar with, Mr. Devontae Rochester,
Yeah.
who is a candidate for the Kansas City School District Board. And he had some great things to say about pre-K for all, and other educational initiatives that he wants to bring about.
Yeah.
Let's get into our show for today. You've already kind of told us a little bit about yourself and who you are. Talk just a little bit about your call to ministry and what is it that got you to where you are now?
Pastor, for those of us that understand the fight, the struggle, the fear of even thinking that a God of the universe have called us and wanting us to answer, that by itself was one of the greatest challenges, and
Yes.
because it's a disqualifying call. You look at you do a self-evaluation of yourself, and just putting a pin right there, it never stops.
Never
The
stops.
call never stops. He just continues to call you to different things that you evaluate yourself and find yourself not qualifying for it. So coming into ministry as it pertains to preaching the gospel, it was a challenge again, and it's set me on a path of education that I was totally unfamiliar with because of my upbringing and where I grew up, how I grew up, and academia was not a part of any of that. So acknowledging a call to preach, and my pastor making me go to school, introducing me to our pastor L. Henderson Bell,
Yes.
who is an educator,
Yes. Yes.
was a challenge, and over, and thinking that was it, just going through the formalities of church, going to church and being in Sunday school and, evangelizing,
Right.
wanting to see souls get saved and doing those things turned out to be another stepping stone for God to say, okay, now let me ask you to come and participate in this journey of pastoring and watching over souls. That having this challenge as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I tell you, you touched on a number of things that only sometimes another pastor can understand. what it's like and what it means to be called.
Yeah.
And it's ongoing,
Ongoing.
as you said.
Yes.
And I was just sitting here thinking about my call as I asked you that question, and it's
Yes.
something that you can't get away from.
Yes.
Because I tried.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't. This is nobody goes into the ministry voluntarily. If they do, I have a question about it.
Yeah, I'm afraid of you. And I'm gonna say this, and it can be challenged. But there's a statistic of how many pastors resign, and my objective to that is, were you really called? Because the calling and the burden of ministry, the frustration of ministry, your crying times, the misunderstanding of who you are, and your inability to convey it.
Yes.
So you like to put people inside of you so they can say, "Oh, okay, now I see." That right there has its its place of lonesomeness.
Yes.
Where you just have to be you and God.
Yes.
And when you refer to the different callings that come, and mine coming at the time it did, and I'm saying to God, I can't do this, and then my pastor approaching me saying, the church wants you to be a deacon. And so I said, oh, so that's what that's what you want me to do, is be a deacon.
Yeah.
And so I qualified the call to preach as being a deacon, and soon as they put me up front as a deacon, it was as if God was looking at me saying, now that's not yet ain't where you're supposed to be. And so your mind, you're wearing this fake smile, and you're just really not happy because you know that you have not answered the call that God is really calling you to.
So you mentioned at the beginning that you're entering in the 17th year.
Yes.
Of being in pastoral ministry, because it's just one thing to be in ministry.
Yes.
It's a little different to be in pastoral ministry.
Yes.
And so entering into your 17th year of pastoral ministry, I'm sure that over the years you have developed a philosophy for ministry.
Yes.
What does that look like for Kingdom Word and for Bishop Morrison?
Well, Pastor, your governing rules. You have the principles of the Bible that it was taught on, the way it was taught to you. And it became the hallmark, it became your foundation of how to, view others,
Mm-hmm.
how to convey messages, how to counsel, through the word. And so you develop your own philosophical way of meandering around,
Yes.
Other beliefs, feelings, and emotions. So over the course, you watch yourself mature. 10 years ago, what you couldn't tolerate, now you learn how to tolerate it.
Yes.
It's not as bad as it appears to be now that it was then. So there's a maturing aspect of it, and then we have to know as pastors that they're God's children, they're your brother and sister, and you have to stay between the people and between God.
Yes.
You just have to stay there. You just have to learn how to literally live right there.
That's it.
Yeah.
And like you said, that is not something you go into ministry having or knowing. That's developed with maturity over time.
Over time. Yeah. People, situations are not all alike, even though it could be the same thing that has happened, because there are different people involved. The whole entire situation is different, and you have to be, very careful. No, like we're saying, is there's no institution, no learning institution that can teach you how to go into a home dealing with anything. That institution doesn't teach you that. It comes through your relationship with God, and to think that you're going to leave that, living room 2 weeks later into another living room with the same thing that has brought you there, and expect the atmosphere to be the same, it's not a reality.
Yeah, yeah, and as I think about the church today and where we are, if you look at the statistics, the Christian church.
Yes.
I think I read somewhere loses about 4 million people a year, and let me say 4 million churches close a year because of lack of attendance and unable to support the ministry any longer, and they just had to close their doors. But in that same statistic, it said there are 2 million churches that start every year. So, but you still had a net loss of 2 million people or 2 million churches every year. My question, I guess, to you is, as we look at the climate, just speaking here in Kansas City, as we look at the climate here in Kansas City, I think we're above 82, 84 homicides so far for 2018. This is a little bit less than where we were this time last year in 2017, but still, it's higher than it's been in recent years. What is the role of the church? If there is a part of the role, what is the role of the church in addressing the violence in our community?
Pastor, now, because this is this Christian platform, and we address let me just do me. When I'm approached, asked and being asked, what's the church doing? Then my mind goes to having to define what the church is.
Come on.
And so we have to move a person's mindset away from the brick and the mortar, because the church is not brick and mortar, but it is the people.
The people.
It's the people. So what is happening with the breakdown of the teaching of the principles of the gospel of Jesus Christ? Has it become more of an institution that has geared itself to the emotional side of people's lives? Are we now massaging people more, or have we gotten away from it? So when I'm approached, what is our role? Our role is to win souls, to introduce to people the love of God through His Son Jesus Christ, and then begin to teach them the principles. And we're just talking about the core of our beliefs, because when you start saying Christian and Bible, we know that there's a plethora of other doctrines that surround Christianity. So if things look like they're getting weaker, maybe it's because we have left the foundation of the way things were taught and the way things were preached when homicide. And I'm just using this as a portion of why there is the rate of homicide. And the role of the church. The role of the church has never changed. I think the methodology and has deviated away. Yeah.
See, and I'm glad you said that, because this is one of those things for me that I can really get up on my soapbox about.
Yes.
The role of the church, first of all, has to be defined and understood.
Yes.
Before you can say, what is the role of the church in this? What is the role of the church in that? What is the role of the church, period, as outlined in Scripture?
Yes.
And then when you deal with that and get people to understand that, then you can invite the conversation of, well, how does what the role of the church factor into these other things that you think the church should be involved in?
I had an opportunity to share with a young lady a couple of days ago. And she had a frustration with pastors not coming out into the community. And so I said, is the community showing up on Sunday morning? Who is that comes in front of him on Sunday morning?
And how did she answer that question?
Well, she, she kind of, jarred her back, yeah. And I said, so, because you don't physically see a pastor on the street corner, in a particular meeting or something, are you now saying that he's ineffective as it pertains to the community? And so that became a question. I said, it's rhetorical, and we just, put it there.
Yeah, because the community is made up, the church is made up of people, not the brick and mortar, as you said.
Yes.
And if people who do come to the brick and mortar go out into the community, then that pastor is represented.
Absolutely.
Does that pastor need to be there themselves when they have representation? I don't know. But they are there. And I think that's an argument that we can push back some.
Absolutely.
That often is tossed in our faces. So then let me ask you this next question. The question, what is the role of the church in the violence that we're seeing here in Kansas City? What is the role of the church in politics? Because some would argue that the violence we're seeing has an undertow of political nature, meaning those in political power are not bringing resources to communities that are depressed, communities that are oppressed, and therefore you have the violence that you sometimes see in those types of areas. So just, after we understand the role of the church according to the Bible, what is the role of the church in politics?
Well, Pastor, as as I think we really brought a lot of clarity to what the church is, and it is the people in our community that are tending according to the core of these beliefs. When we start talking politically about should or shouldn't a born again believer be in politics, then you have to go and vet the Bible and find out if there were. Well, there were judges.
Come on.
In the Bible. And so when we start looking at the judges today in politics,
yes, they are elected.
They are elected to those positions that define certain resources and things that come into our communities. Now, locally, statewide, nationally, should be represented in the role of the church, should be in positions that give leadership respectfully in across the board. The entire spectrum of politics, whether is the school board. I think that person should be someone that is looking at things, and I say this to you and our listeners, someone that represents bipartisans in a massive way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want share it in that capacity.
So what I hear you saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there is biblical, scriptural support for politics, so to speak, in that there were judges recorded in Scripture.
Yes.
And as you said so eloquently a few minutes ago, the church is made up of people who make up community. And there are people in the church, as well as those in leadership in the church, who are still people from the community. And so they have to, in their own way, in their own calling, step into those roles as leaders, not just in the church, but in the community.
Yes, sir.
Whether that's politically or otherwise.
Yes, sir.
I would also say that there are times when a pastor may serve in a dualistic role. For example, the prosecuting attorney for Wyandotte County right now, I met the brother today, is also a senior pastor
Yes.
of a church.
Yes.
One of my mentors in ministry
Yes.
was a senior pastor of a church for 34 years.
Yes.
And now is a United States congressman.
Yes, sir.
So there's all these examples. Dr. Martin Luther King never served politically, but don't you think he had a political message?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So there's these multiple examples throughout Scripture and throughout our history where those two intersections have crossed.
Yes,
Politics
sir.
and the church.
Yes, sir. I will go on record to say that, and I haven't visited all of the capitals. I have not been in all of the capitals in this country, but I love to believe that in all of them, in the rotunda of it, there is scripture
Say
that is written, embedded in the mortar of those facilities, and it's not watered down. And I think now when we start talking about the fractured system that has brought literally intentionally depleted areas, communities, rural areas of resources, have come by the inerrant teaching
Come on.
and the lack of honesty and loyalty that Shadrach or Meshach, they all, which were forced into a place, but after being proven that they are godly men, were elevated to govern over Babylon, even though Babylon was not their home.
Come on.
So I believe that, Pastor, that it is necessary. It is definitely necessary for anyone, and it's capable, and it's doable to have dual roles as senior pastors as well as governors or chief of police. Was in a place in Virginia, and the chief of police got up and spoke in regarding to a gentleman that we were consecrating, confirming as a bishop in our fellowship. The chief of police from that region came and literally preached a message. The chief of police did. So dual roles, and he's an elder in his church, so that was phenomenal.
Well, I can tell you, one of our former governors, the one before the one that just, had all the issues, Governor Jay Nixon was a deacon in his church.
Yes.
And so we know that there's an intersection, and I guess to wrap this all up, what would you say to the person that says, there's no place for politics in the church?
Well, I would have to really, being very palatable, is say that if you are a studier, if you're willing to really look at what God says, if you accept the Bible as its holy writings, then you will witness the politics, and you can't live life without politics.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Even in the church.
Even in the church. So think that when we get to the bedrock of it, let's be honest. Let's be people of integrity. Let's be people that are transparent. Let's want to be held accountable, and have a deep-seated passion to see equality for everybody.
That's excellent segue to this last part that I wanted to ask you about.
Yes, sir.
2 years ago,
Yes, sir.
2016, you made a bid for the highest position politically in the state of Missouri.
Yes, sir.
And I understand there's a lot of things that you learned from that.
Yes, sir.
Share with the viewers some of the things that you learned that might be helpful for them to know going into this midterm election and then elections in 2 years.
Let me just really, share again back on the call. I want the listeners to know that I didn't wake up one morning and just say, well, I guess I run.
Nobody wants to do that.
For the highest seat in the state, seeing that I hadn't sat on any seat, a neighborhood, community meeting seat or any seat. Yes, I've never participated in. The ideal of it, Pastor, was really Um, uh, the learning experience is that where I thought I would find support, I didn't. And inadvertently, where I didn't think it was going to come from, it did.
It did.
I also learned that if we're not careful, we can get caught up in our own personal silos as the problem that we have in a particular area is the only trouble and problems that are going on. And if you're not careful, you can really become selfish in identifying to the pain and weariness that transcends other places. So I learned to really become a little bit more open-minded in that area. The plight of meeting different people on different levels of life showed me, the ideology of so many different people's lives. That was a very great learning experience for me.
I just can't imagine the call, because that's what it was.
Yes.
It wasn't something like you said.
Oh,
you
my
woke up
goodness. Yes.
and said, "I want to
Yes.
run for governor." But
It took me 2 weeks before I even said yes. And I made God, and I'm not using that loosely. I'm just saying, I said, if this is what you really are asking me to do, because I had no political science credits at all in regarding my degrees or anything. And so that was my major challenge. I don't know the rhetoric. I don't know how to stand on that stump. I don't know this. And so why would you, seeing all these individuals that have went to school, that are striving for this, why would you not select one of them, reach over all of them and get me? And I was very, very outdone.
Yeah.
I mean, I was really thrown, because it was night and day. Our pastor told me, once I accepted my call to preach and sat at his feet to be taught, he said, "Do not engage in politics."
I remember you telling me that story.
Yes, and I wrote it on my holy grail. Okay, yes, sir. He said, "Get close to it, but never get in it." And so for me, it became that challenge. How do I go back and tell him now? What do I say to him? He gonna be mad at me? He ain't gonna like me no more? And I love him, and I was afraid of being ostracized in just that.
Yeah,
just that by itself was challenging, and we have now, we come through that door, and at the conclusion, who would have thought that I would receive, over 30-some thousand votes in 4 months of campaigning, and no experience and no money, and finish ahead of other politicians, and finish second behind the sitting incumbent of the person of Chris Coster, who inadvertently lost, the primary. So that was just, for me, I was at a point of saying, I'm so glad that this is over.
Yeah. Well, speaking of our pastor, whenever you had went public with your candidacy, he stood from the pulpit. And we're talking about politics in the church.
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you what our pastor did. He stood from the pulpit and said, I would rather support someone I know who is rooted and grounded in faith than somebody who I know is not. And he put it out there just like that. I was in the service when he did it. I'm not talking about hearsay, what somebody told me he said. I was there. So I understand when you sat at his feet, and this is something he said, get close to it, don't get in it. Even when you announced it to him that you were going to do, and you was worried about him being mad at you, he came out publicly in support of you.
Yes.
And there were others who did the same thing, and I'm one of them. So these are lessons you learned in that candidacy process just over 2 years ago. And I'm sure that those lessons applied even to your ministry today.
Yes. It was a door that you got 30,000 people. There's 30,000 people
who
that
say we want you.
We wanted you. you know. And for me, I tried to, you know, push that back and said, now, I did what you said, you know, and that's what I was waiting for the Lord to respond back, like, yes, you did, but it's as if he has not said anything. Like, no, you're doing as I said.
Yeah.
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 And it has, you know, caused us to open up the mindset of the congregation to a whole nother perspective of what ministry is supposed to start looking like now.
I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Well, you know, we're out of time, but I gotta just put this out there and ask your question on it. Colin Kaepernick.
Yes.
And this Nike ad campaign for their 30th anniversary.
Yes.
Your thoughts on that as a black man, as a father, and then also as a preacher, pastor?
Well, I'll summarize it just as individual, whether a father, whether a black man, whether a pastor, regardless. This, the whole idea of how and what took place, the lack of knowledge. God said, my people are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. The failure to go and look at the etymology of all of this.
Come on.
If you just did that, there's clarity that automatically, you know, erupts. So for it to be where it is right now, and the attention to naysayers, those that are for, you know, and I said this, and I might get in trouble, but it was intriguing. It was intriguing, and I had to sit up. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
To have it viewed that people were burning up Nike gear, you know, in saying he shouldn't have done this. Nike shouldn't have done this. Now they have a collaborative effort between Colin Kaepernick and Nike is coming against us, you know, mentality.
Come on,
you know, and so
break it down.
as a result of this, we're gonna burn up, you know, this apparel that I spent money for. Okay, so you know, it for me it just kind of comes off like, okay, and you're not showing who's burning it up.
Right.
You know, so you're not identifying, but he was bold enough to stand up for a cause that everyone understands that it had nothing to do with patriotism.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with patriotism.
Yeah.
And so that, it for me, I say to the Colin Kaepernicks, I say to the Nikes, and if Under Armour wants to join in, and anybody else wants to join in to this cause that we have seen the injustice, and it's you know, it's not nothing that no white, black, Hispanic, Latino, no one can say it doesn't exist. For it is very clear and it's evident that our prison system is a you know, is a picture of the, you know, the injustice that has been going on.
Well, Bishop, man, I tell you, 30 minutes goes by so quickly.
So quickly.
I have enjoyed our conversation today. I always do.
Well, bless
I mean, you know, we get out of training and walk to the parking lot and talk another hour
and a half,
before we get out of there. I just always enjoy talking to you. That's genuine.
Thank you.
Because you're genuine.
Thank you.
And I know I'm going to get the truth of how you feel and what you think, not some facade.
Yes, sir.
And there's not a lot of people like that, and I appreciate your genuineness and your ability to be candid and just to be transparent on a lot of things. And so, thank you. I know you're a busy person. I'm going to end this show today, but thank you for taking your time out. Listen, I know that people are going to respond and say, "Can you bring him back?" So when that happens, I'm hoping that you'll give us a little more time and we can continue this conversation.
We'll certainly be back, Pastor Faulkner. And as you know, as you were mentioned in our opening, our tenure as friends, as well as this needs to be done more. And I'm humbled. I was humbled when you even asked me. And to the listeners and those that will view this, he wanted me to be the first one on, and I'm so glad that others have went before me. But I'm grateful to you, and I want you to know that this work right here is something that has been ordained by God, and is touching many lives. And we can appreciate you, Pastor, for you carving out a time in the day to say, hey, let me bring some people in to get information, to open up people's minds on different subject matters that they may have just didn't know what was really going on in our city and even abroad. And I will say this, in that political piece of where we are today as a senior pastor, as a bishop, a third jurisdictional bishop of New Vision Worldwide Fellowship of Churches, where Apostle Larry B. Aiken is our presiding bishop. One of my fathers in the gospel. I brag that I have two of them all the time. Two of the most integral men I probably ever going to meet. And but I say this in my closing and going that political place is. I'm saying this so it can probably help someone. Is that you can infiltrate the political arena without the politics infiltrating you.
Say that again.
I want people to understand, because, Pastor, if you were to go in, you have too many principles, godly principles, that are in your heart. So you can infiltrate that place without that place infiltrating you.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I just want to say that to anybody that may be considering going, and if anybody said, hey, we would love to see you go again, I would want to know what those issues would be, what the issues would be that concern you the most. Let me know what those were. I'll pray, because if God decides to push us out there again, I want to make sure that I'm handling and fighting for the issues and the concerns and the problem of the people they're facing them right now.
That is awesome, and I'm glad that you said that. We know that this man, Bishop Eric Morrison, was a candidate for the Missouri State Governor in 2016. And what I just heard him say is that he would like to know from the people what you see those problem areas are, those issues that you sometimes have difficulty navigating around the state of Missouri. And if God pushes you back out there again,
yes, sir,
he would have some things to go to Jefferson City and work on.
Yes.
So please, as you share your comments, include in those comments things that you would like the next governor to address. And certainly Bishop Eric Morrison is also on Facebook.
Yes.
You can find him under Facebook how?
By Eric Morrison. You type in Eric Morrison, I'm going to come up. You probably see a duality of me in clergy, and and then 2016 the suit, the apparel, looking gubernatorial.
Okay, so there you have it. You can search for Bishop Eric Morrison under Eric Morrison on Facebook. I noticed the other day you also have a Twitter account. It's inactive. You don't be doing that.
Yes,
but he does have a Twitter account. And certainly share with him, your thoughts and feedback around things you would want the next governor to address. And should the Lord put it on his heart to do this again, we want to get behind him and support him 100%. Thank you all today for tuning in, and please leave your comments. This is my 7th show.
Wow.
And in order to continue this, I need your support. And if you like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know. And at the end of 10 shows, that will be it. If most of the comments are, we don't like it.
Yes, sir.
If most of the comments are that we do like it, we will continue in some capacity. But until then, God bless you and keep you is my prayer. And again, thank you to Bishop Morrison for being with us on the show today. We will see you guys again next Saturday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until then, God bless you and keep you.
Thank you. You can't put two preachers on a 30-minute.
No, you can't. No, you can't. So we are clear.
Oh, okay.
But it was clear when you said you can't put two preachers there.
Oh, okay.
So we was good.
Well, I mean, they know that.
Yeah,
People
that's
know
right.
that two preachers get together and start talking. How do you think it went?
I think it went great. Let's we can quickly look at it.
I
and
hate
see.
looking at myself and hearing myself. I
I
swear I
do too.
do. I hate
I
that.
do too.
And man, I'm gonna tell you, Pastor Bill told me. When I started preaching, you know, after he inundated me with the expository preaching and delivered me from topical preaching. When I tell you, he's like, you need to listen to yourself. Man, I used to take my tape recorder around, record, you know, that cassette player. I used to set that thing up there on the pulpit, go to preaching, wait the next day and listen to it. I'm like, I was stuttering all, I was like, and all of that, man. And it was just, oh my goodness. I still today, that's just eerie. I ain't lying. We was in Virginia. We're in Virginia now. There's some technology out there. I'm not as tech savvy. There's some technology out there. Bishop Landon Mason. He is over 14 counties up in North Carolina. He's the executive economic developer up there. All right, and over schools.
Okay.
Over the schools, and takes us to his office, but he takes us to his conference room. His conference room is literally a touchscreen TV. I mean,
so he does his conferences right there, but with everybody looking in.
Everybody, yeah. And so he goes and says, so last week, we knowing that you're coming, you and Apostle Akins was on his way, so they wanted to see you all in both settings, your professional setting and your church setting. So this is what I showed him about you, Bishop Morrison. And so he hits the screen, my name comes up, pushes now. Now he done picked up, dude. He done picked up though somebody else's Facebook feed out of the church. He said, I like this angle because he goes to somebody else that was in the congregation Facebooking me. He said, I like this one because it gets a real good. And he said, because this one don't. And he showed Mia's phone. Mia had one of the young men holding up her phone on Facebook. But he says, I like this one right here. So he shifts the screen over. Yeah, he just whipped like that. And I'm hollering down. I'm in a vein. I have no intro or nothing. I'm in a real strong vein. And you know, there's nuggets that are flowing like that. And he was like, man, and they appreciate that. And then he taps it. And Sandy was at one of the concerned clergy meetings, and she was, and she said, and so he said, and so this is his posture at the in a business setting. And so I said, man, that is so. I mean, he was, touching. It's just the technology the board was phenomenal, man.
Yes, it's crazy. So we already got.
Oh my goodness.
Here's our recent feedback. Hey BFF, great guest today. I love to hear Bishop speak. BMFF listened to. That's her mother. Pastor Acosta, churches and government should work. When you have God's loving people, government can do what is right for the people. I mean, Chris Graves is watching. Troy Teal is watching. All these people were watching.
Mm.
See, my voice is terrible. Oh, this is
we doing it all. We still on. We still on.
No.
boy, look.